Welcome to this week's episode of Beyond Tomorrow. Andrew Nida, Moise Param here, Asset Management Group. My man, I hope you're doing well.
Good.
I know you're doing well.
No,
we just spent a week in San Diego.
I know.
We're doing
it was
okay.
amazing. My second time going to San Diego. I think it was your first, right?
It was my second, but it's been like a
second.
decade.
Yeah, it was great. You know, we went there for a conference, so we actually had a chance to meet with some of the money managers and portfolio managers that we work with our clients. But we were actually able to go spend some time at the San Diego Zoo with our spouses, and so mixing a little bit of business with pleasure at the
nice.
same time. But it was awesome.
I know San Diego is extremely expensive, so if you want to be wise with your finances, don't be traveling to San Diego. Yeah, it's crazy expensive, but it was incredible.
It was great.
Food was awesome, and you know, like any other industry, it is a lot about who you know, who you're around, and you and I were both fortunate to be able to have some incredible interviews with some pretty incredible people, at least by their tenure and experience and their records. So it was an enjoyable trip for sure.
Awesome.
So I want to throw out a quote that I thought kind of matches the narrative of Beyond Tomorrow. Okay, I want to read this to everybody listening. A lack of routine causes more problems than poor choices. Routines turn desired behavior into default behavior.
I love that.
I do too, because you know, the whole concept of Beyond Tomorrow is to really try to motivate your decision-making today in response to what your goals are beyond tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And that really points it in the right direction. I really like that quote because it matches what we're doing here. And the reality is it has to almost start with a routine. And routines, let's just be honest, to get to where it's not a routine and it's just natural, it's a pain.
It's a pain. It takes time. It takes discipline. But I think the faster you realize and grasp that the decisions you make today will ultimately impact your life tomorrow, the faster you get to that point, I think the more seamless that transition of the routine becomes.
Yeah.
Because there is always an end in mind, and those routines, it just become more of just habits, and it just becomes more of just your daily life.
So let me tell you, I started. I'm 2 days into my routine.
Okay, 2 days in.
Yeah,
that's a good start.
It is a good start. And my end in mind is 2 weeks from now, because what I'm not going to let Mo forget is that he wanted to open up his mouth about spring break.
That's right.
And talk about getting in shape. So we have a bet going. 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I'm 2 days in.
Okay.
To my boys to the gym. I'm feeling terrible. I mean, awful. I was so sore. I'm like, I feel like I need my wife's help to put a shirt on. But anyway, no, we're in a good spot. And you better get ready.
Oh, I'm ready.
I'm coming.
I'm ready.
I'm telling you.
Haven't eaten all weekend.
I'll start running 2 a days if I need to. But anyway, no, yeah. So motivation, you got to get your stuff. You got to get your act right. Make good quality decisions. That's what we're about here. And with that said, we've been talking about real estate. We got a lot of great information. A little bit more specific on today's show on investing in long-term rentals, specifically residential rentals.
Okay.
But before we get there, because we do this show week to week, and we are part of an investment firm, Asset Management Group. Quick recap on the markets. Not much to talk about. Last week was not too great.
Not really great. Not really great. You know, the CPI and didn't come back as we expected. Right, higher than forecasted, and the markets kind of took that news and reacted as accordingly. But you know, I think the overwhelming sentiment is the narrative that the market kind of started the year with. I thought, and I think you thought the same way too, was a little more aggressive with how many Fed rate cuts were going to happen in 2024.
Right.
I think now we're looking at possibly 3 to end 24. Three cuts at 25 basis points each is probably what we're looking at right now. And we'll see, right? I mean, the market is still hot in some areas, but ultimately inflation is still hasn't really been handled and getting to the goal of where Powell wants to be at 2%.
Yeah, and you know it's a strong goal. 2% is,
yeah. But
you're right. Like CPI, PPI, none of that's really corresponding with his target of getting inflation down to 2%. We're going to hear from him this week,
right?
You know, but as always, I think our message has been this year, and once again this week, we're not seeing rate cuts. Okay, not anytime soon. It may be later in the year. I think the markets have kind of taken their step back, like you said, maybe 3. You know, but we've also seen a quick rise in fuel rates. I know you guys are feeling the pressure, just general fuel costs. I know I am. I drive a diesel truck and I drive a car, but nonetheless, fuel's expensive. It seems like that always happens right here at spring break, travel season time.
Yeah.
And we're having to deal with darn costs going through the roof, but that's life.
Yeah, how much of it is seasonality and how much of it is actually like just natural inflation that we're seeing right now?
Yeah. And how much do they know that we're preparing for a road trip?
Yeah.
I feel like they know.
Well, we've got a mini one coming up in Florida, going to the Florida Keys, but not like the one you're taking later on this summer.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But now you got to readjust the pricing. It's crazy, but nonetheless, yeah, Fed's coming up speaking this week, so we'll keep you guys in tune. Once again, make sure you subscribe to our page. Stay with us week to week. Try to give you some good quality information on markets, but then also general theme topics. Right now is real estate. So with that said, you want to jump into just a quick recap of what we hit last week on the episode for Beyond Tomorrow.
Yeah, overall last week we wanted to answer the question, why invest in real estate? And ultimately what we've come up with is that the main question that most people have is this a good time to invest in real estate, right? We're seeing housing prices increase dramatically. We're seeing interest rates creep up to over 7% right now. Mm-hmm. And so you put those factors in together, then the question is, I want to diversify my portfolio. I want to add some different alternative investing into my overall investment strategy, but is real estate the ideal opportunity for me right now? And so that's what that was the overarching question we were looking to answer is today and is it now a good time to invest in real estate? Mm-hmm. And we came up with, yeah, it really is. It all depends, right? It all depends if you've done the due diligence to see is the actual deal that you're looking at is a good deal for you. Mm-hmm. Because it could be the same deal for two different people, could be a ideal sweet deal for them, and then it could be a worse decision that they could make.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. If you're an investor that's afraid of interest rates, afraid of the pricing of the housing market right now, then you would surely be afraid of the markets as well. Stocks, fixed income. I mean, everything is so elevated.
Right.
But the reality is investors find a way to invest. I think it's key for you to remember there's investors making money right now. And I go back, and I'm gonna pick on Dave Ramsey here for a second. I probably shouldn't because his podcast has a lot more viewers than mine.
For now,
yeah, for now we're coming for you. But no, anyway. But literally, I was listening to a reel that he had out on real estate investing, and a gentleman calls in on a show, and this was 4 years ago. Okay, 4 years ago. And this gentleman calls in. He gets on the phone with Dave Ramsey, which is a pretty strong accomplishment anyway, because he's got such a huge audience. He gets on the phone. He says, I got a question. Me and my wife, we live in the house that we live in right now. It's our residence. We live upstairs, rent the basement. Okay. But they're expecting, and they were expecting their first child. And the house that they're living in just really wasn't fit to start that journey of a family and children. And so they're looking to potentially sell the house.
Okay.
And this gentleman who's calling in is getting advice from his buddies, if you will, that they're saying, hey, man, why are you going to sell it? Interest rates are super low. Okay. You don't owe a ton on the property. Why not rent it? Generate cash flow from that property. And he's asking Dave Ramsey, what should I do? And Dave Ramsey's only response was, do you have any loan or any debt on the property?
Okay.
And the gentleman said, yeah, I don't own it free and clear. We're a young family. He said, so that's really the answer. The answer is sell the house, because to invest in real estate outside of your primary residence, you got to pay cash. That's the only way. Now, in his defense, he over-leveraged in his history. If you ever look at some of the groundwork of Dave Ramsey, I believe he over-leveraged, got into a bad spot,
went bankrupt,
economy fell, filed bankruptcy. So in his defense, is paying cash for property a bad thing? Absolutely not.
No, not at all.
Absolutely not. Is it the best way to approaching investing in real estate? Is it the best way to build your portfolio? It's going to take a lot more time, assuming you have the cash flow from a job that's going to generate enough to be able to begin paying cash for property. So I look at that guy's situation. I'm like, man, He bought 3-4 years ago, decided to sell this house, and yet once again the value of properties continue to rise, and missed out on it. But you're looking right now, investors are finding ways to invest in properties, but you got to do your homework.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think one of the things that when you're investing in real estate, you have to, investing in general, right? But I would say specifically real estate, you have to come at it with a business mindset behind it, especially if you're looking to, add to your portfolio, right? Not just one property, but 2, 3, 4 plus, right? Mm-hmm. You really have to look at it as a business, because there's so much numbers, so much that comes into purchasing a property that you can't just go into it blindly. That's why analyzing the deal is so important, because if you're not analyzing the deal and taking into consideration all the multiple factors that go into making sure that the deal is ideal for you, then you could be in a situation where you may be over leveraged and then now you're stuck with multiple properties, multiple mortgages, multiple loans. Mm-hmm. And now you're stuck with your hands up trying to figure out, well, how do I salvage
How am I going to get
this?
out of this mess?
Right.
Yeah.
And so goes back to that quote you mentioned before, right? Having that routine, having the discipline kind of gets you into a good shape when it comes to real estate investing.
I think you're right. There's a lot of ways to win with real estate. You got to have a game plan. You got to have a business mindset. Okay. Do your homework, analyze the financials. Now, listen, before we jump into the details of how you analyze a residential long-term rental, let's just be honest. There's a lot of ways to win when you're investing in real estate. We talked a little bit about this last week. One of those ways is cash flow. Obviously, these investments, they spin off a lot of cash flow. Remember, especially here at our firm, we're coaching our clients consistently. Cash flow is the name of the game.
It really is.
It absolutely is. It is the tell story of your ability to retire, your ability to stay retired. It is what will support the lifestyle in which you want to live or the lifestyle you currently live. Cash flow is the king when it comes to your financial well-being. It's also what's going to be able for you to be generous and to support others and to help others. So cash flow is a major component to you being successful. Real estate does a great job at spinning off cash flow. It also does a great job at appreciating.
Yeah, actually this past weekend, Amber and I were just looking at the value of our home, and it's gone up 50% since we bought it in late 2023. So not even 4 years, it's gone up 50%. And that is amazing, right? Mm-hmm. We haven't added anything to it. We haven't done any work to it since we purchased it, but it's gone up 50%. And that is an amazing feat, right? To have your home appreciate in that short of a time. So in addition to the cash flow that a rental property can produce, now you're getting the appreciation of that property. And if you purchase it, in 2020 like we did and experience the same type of appreciation that we have, wow, you've won doubly.
Yeah, if that's a word.
If that's a word. I wouldn't say it's a word.
Yeah, but no, you're right. You do win in multiple ways. Appreciation's one of them. Cash flow's one of them. Another one, tax advantages. Yep. Now, a lot of people were not filing itemized returns anymore. We're taking standard deductions, right? Yeah. But once again, if you're entering into real estate investing with a business mindset, you're going to open up the doors to begin to itemize. Once again, tax advantages through owning real estate is huge when you're able to itemize. What's another one, Mo? I'm trying to think here. Hedge against inflation.
That's huge.
We all know rent goes up, over time. And as a result, it usually keeps up with the pace of increase with inflation. So that's another
and just a hard asset as well. Just having a tangible asset that you can feel, that you can touch, adds a lot of security to one's overall plan. So that security and that peace of mind, just knowing that you have a tangible asset, is another pro, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then also just like some pros and cons around purchasing a long-term residential rental versus short-term. I think it's a lot of common questions that I think investors have when they're getting into the rental spaces. Listen, I've heard about Airbnb. I use Airbnb. I use VRBO. Should I purchase short-term or should I purchase a long-term rental? Well, when you're looking at long-term residential rental, I think the reality is pretty consistent. It's one of the pros with purchasing long-term rental space, that it's predictable. Yeah. Hopefully you don't have a lot of turnover.
You don't want that.
You don't want it, right? So you got a property that's in a right area. you did your homework, it's close to a good school district, and you're able to get good quality renters into that house, well, hopefully it's a kind of a sit it and forget it type investment.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's some maintenance that has to be part of the equation, but that consistent cash flow is pretty attractive. Where a short-term rental, there may
Much
be
more hands-on.
much more hands-on, right? But also you might get a little more cash flow just because you're taking advantage of seasonality.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the consistency may not be where it is as far as like getting that long-term renter in place.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a lot more hands-on, but in return, there's more cash flow opportunities typically with short-term rental. Regulation's a big one, okay?
Yeah.
When you're looking at long-term residential rental, we gave out a number last week. It was like
44 million.
44 million.
Yeah.
Americans renting their homes. So it's a natural way of finding a place to live in most communities, which means most communities, they're not regulating whether you can or cannot rent. Now, it may be regulated by your HOA or your neighborhood, but oftentimes not by the community, whereas short-term rentals oftentimes are.
That's right.
Okay. And so you go down to places in Florida, you got to be mindful if, number one, do they only allow a certain amount of permits out for short-term rentals? Can the local government change the regulation, which would nix your whole business right out of the gate? So you got to be mindful of those things. You don't really have to worry about that with long-term rentals.
That's why with all the pros and cons that we talked about, I would say the first and foremost we want to look at is, you want to analyze the deal itself, right? We know real estate as a whole, the pros and cons, we just talked about it, but now the specific deal itself, and to see whether this is a good opportunity or a good time for you to invest in. And I'd say the first thing you want to look at is analyzing yourself. Mm-hmm. What's my goal? What's my ultimate rationale behind getting into real estate? Is it to diversify my portfolio overall? Is it to, build a real estate business? Is it to get into long-term, short-term? You want to start flipping, right? What's my time frame? Is this a 5-year exit strategy, or am I looking to build wealth for myself and my family and generations down the road over the next 20, 35 years or whatever it may be, right? So what's my rationale behind getting into real estate?
Yeah, what's my why?
What's my why?
If you have a good game plan of what you want the future to look like, right? Then you can be able to weather the storms when it comes to any type of investments. We obviously preach this in the world of market-based investing. The only way you're going to be able to weather the volatility that is going to happen is to have a plan that you're trying to work through to get to come true.
Right.
And so you can be able to handle the volatility that you're going to experience with, the S&P 500 dropping 15-20% like it did in recent years. So same thing's true with real estate. You got to understand and you got to ask yourself, why in the world am I going to purchase it? Is it to become financially free like you mentioned? And if so, and you approach this thing mindfully, then you can weather those storms, because the reality is with long-term rental, you're going to have turnover. And when that turnover does happen, it's likely you're going to have to spend money on the house, right? It's likely someone may not value your home, not all, but maybe someone gets in there and doesn't value your property the way that you would. And so you're having to, rejuvenate the house, if you will. Mm-hmm. So the truth is if you can answer the why question, how does it fit within my bigger picture, my bigger plan? What is it going to be used for? What's the goal with the property and accomplishing my future goals? Then I can stay consistent through it. I think that's huge. And then timeline's necessary when it comes to long-term rentals, because, they're long-term.
Right.
And the whole goal is that it spins off cash flow. So how you get into the property financially would be key in understanding how it's going to work with your timeline. With that said, if you're ready and you have the business mindset, you're looking for the components and the tools to equip you to understand a good deal, the next thing is really analyzing the location.
Yeah, location, right? We've all heard that term before, but location is huge. Especially if you're looking to do long-term rentals, well, what do you need? You need renters, right? So, you want to make sure that the location that you're choosing or have chosen is very attractive to renters, right? So we want to look at places, look at things as far as, well, what's the demographic of the area, right? Are we seeing businesses come in, or are we seeing businesses leave? Is it more of a tourist attraction? Like we live in Cartersville, and Cartersville is a great place, but there's a lot of attractions here, right? We have Pine Mountain not too far. We have vineyards. We have museums. There's a lot of activity going on in Cartersville, and that can be very attractive for many people. So the location itself is very ideal to see whether it is a great place for you to be. Are there sporting events, sporting venues in the area? So what is very attractive about that location that could gravitate more renters?
I think an easy way to draw a picture for listeners of our show would be to use, and I know it's kind of silly, but nonetheless, like, think about the solar system. Okay, the planets obviously attracted to the sun. And so when you're looking at purchasing real estate, you want to know, like you're saying, what is that sun? Okay, it could be the city of Atlanta. It could be a college like Kennesaw State University. But it's what is attracting people to that area. Now, you may not want to buy that area because obviously the price of real estate's already going to be elevated, right, because of it's highly populated. There's a reason people are going there. But what you do is then look for those planets. Google Earth is a quick and easy software to use for this. You find your sun, and then you zoom out and you look at satellite towns, suburbs around the sun that may be attractive. Maybe as a college student, you don't want to live in, Kennesaw because the price is too high, or the city of Atlanta. You may want to jump out to the suburbs 10 miles away.
All right.
Find you a place that's going to be less expensive. And that's a great way of kind of initially just finding the area that you want to be in. Once you define the area, then you're looking for obviously available property, and you're cross-referencing available property to local items. As someone living in the suburbs, you want the life of what it's like to live in the suburbs.
Yeah.
Right? You want to be close to a park.
Right.
Walking parks or sidewalks, and you want to be able to ride your bike in communities.
Yeah, nice downtown area, right? I mean, like there, you want to be in. You're right. If you're looking to be in the suburbs, you want that suburb feel. But a lot of nowadays the commute is also another big thing, right? You want that suburb feel, but you don't want to be too far from where activity is. So also looking at what's the commuting distance between some of those attractions that are gravitating you towards. Like you mentioned, the sun, for instance. So yeah, so looking at everything geographically around that property really does make it more appealing to see whether the actual location is a good spot, is a good place to invest in.
I think so. And then what you and I both do is when you find that area, you're like, okay, this is a key area. I think it's ahead of growth, but yet very attractive, still at a reasonable price point. Then you start analyzing property, which is always fun. Right. Once again, I'm a lover of Google Earth. I think it's an incredible software, and it may be a bit outdated, but nonetheless, use Google Earth.
Yeah, why not?
Find yourself 4 or 5 different properties that you say to yourself, okay, these could be an option for sure. I could show some interest in any of these. Get on Google Earth and start looking at the property from the street view. You're looking for things like, number one, is the property on a busy road? Busy highway, maybe that's going to be a little bit more challenging when you're looking at families trying to get in there to rent. Mm-hmm. Is the house too close to the road? Does it have a big backyard?
Right. What's the landscaping? Is there more upkeep that has to be done with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Is it above elevation or below elevation? I'll be honest with you. If the property's below elevation, below the road, I'm out.
Yeah.
Okay, don't want any maintenance as a result of poor water flow. So you're just kind of looking at the aesthetics of the property. You could also get online and look at other properties that have rented close by.
Yeah,
and compare and contrast.
Yeah, what's the history of rates of rent in that neighborhood? You can look at the growth rate. How have properties appreciated over time? You want to go back. At more than the 4 or 5 years, you want to take a good wide snapshot of that. So maybe 10, 15, maybe even 20 years if the data is available. So you can really get a trajectory of what you're expecting in the future. But yeah, you really want to look at the property itself and just see, again, the location seems very attractive. But now it's the physical property itself, and something like technology like Google Maps, you can actually look, or Google Earth, you can actually look at the neighboring properties, and you can actually look at that property and say, okay, this property sold for X, this property is renting for X. You compare it to yours and see how does your property or your potential property fare up to this to a neighboring property.
It really is a great, simple, easy way. Doesn't cost you anything to analyze properties side by side. There's also software out there and websites that we use. BiggerPockets is something that I'm subscribed to. I use a lot. Gives you a little bit more of that granular detail, but no, Zillow, and I mean, you can still do a lot of work just there.
Yeah.
Between Zillow and Google Earth as an example. When you've been able to define, okay, I've narrowed it down to 2 or 3 different properties, then you're looking to simply do the financials behind it. Okay. You want these properties to meet certain criteria. Now, once again, you got to know your why to better understand what these properties need to do for you financially. Okay. Because just because a property works may not work for you. I'll give you an example. I purchased a property last year, and the rent on that property, it covers the overall cost of the property, but my net cash flow is not significant. Okay. But that's okay for me.
Because that wasn't your why.
That's not my why. For someone else, their why may be, hey, this property's got to generate a lot of positive cash flow. Okay, so you got to understand your why because every deal is different. But when you go in there, you're looking at things like, a simple way when you have a lot of properties, gross rent multiplier. Okay? You take your total price of the property and divide it by total annual rent. Okay, that's going to get you just a simple number to compare and contrast against multiple properties to get you locked in on one more so than the other. It's a quick way. When you got 1 or 2 properties you're narrowed down into, you're looking at NOI, net operating expense. You're looking at cap rate. And so you want to, let's just break down a little bit. Net operating expense, Mo. What is NOI?
Yeah, so your net operating income is your gross rent minus your expenses, but not including the debt itself. So that's the first start to understanding what the cap rate is understanding what your net operating income is.
Yeah. So, I mean, think about it. If you're renting a house for $1,300 a month and your expenses are 50%, which is high, but in this part of the equation, you want to be generous with those types of numbers to, soften the burden if it's a bad deal, right? So $1,300 a month and the operational cost is 50%, that leaves you with $650 a month, which is your net operating income, which is $7,800 a year. So once you know the NOI, then you say, okay, I got $7,800 of income coming in against a property purchase price of $160,000. Okay, that gives me my cap rate. Okay, my cap rate in that equation is 4.9%.
Okay.
Now, why is it important to know your why? Well, it's 4.9% a deal. Good deal for you.
Yeah. Who knows, right? I mean, that's why coming into it with the understanding of what does it take, or what are you looking to get out of the property, right? So let's say 4.9% doesn't move the needle for you. What if you're coming into it saying, I need 10%? Right. If I can get this to 10%, then this is an attractive deal for me. Well, now we know that your cap rate is 4.9% in this example. And let's say you looked at your historical growth rate of the properties in that location, and you notice that the growth rate is like 4%. Okay, so that means you expect the property and the value of the property to go up by 4% every year. So 4 and 4.9 is 8.9. How do we get to 10? Right. How do we get to 10%? So the difference would be is finding what to get to the 10%.
What that target cap rate is.
Target cap rate is, right? So we need to get to 6%.
So the reality is, in that situation, it gives you better knowledge because now you know, where do I need to be at to make an offer on this property. So then I say to myself, okay, I can't settle for a cap rate of 4.9. The only way I can make this deal work is to get it to 6. Why 6? If my target is 6, I simply take my target, my net operating expense of $7,800 a month, divided by my target cap rate of 6%. When you do that equation, it equals $130,000. Now I know For me to make sense of this, I need to be in the property at 130. And the reason that's so important is because at 130, I get my cap rate at 6, plus what you talked about, which is my property appreciating over time at 4. Now I'm at a 10% year-over-year return.
And now it's an attractive deal.
And listen, will the seller take that offer? Who knows? But does it hurt to make an offer?
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Make an offer.
And then you're just coming into the deal with the right expectations.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people, not with just real estate, but with investing overall, is they come in with the wrong expectations, or throughout the process, their expectations weren't met. So this way, we know if we can get the property at the precise price, or close to the precise price, right, that gets us to our goal, then everything should be smooth sailing at that point, because you've got the property at the right price.
That's right. And then lastly, don't be emotional.
Yeah.
Okay? If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And that's the truth. And one of those disciplines you got to stay consistent to today is just not getting too emotional. If there's too much headwind in the deal, back off. Don't push through. I want to end the show with a quote, just like we started. Be patient. I think investors as a group have a tendency to always want to be doing something, when often the best course of action is to do nothing at all. That's by Steve Edmondson. And so the point is for you guys is, as we talk about real estate and we talk about investing on this show Beyond Tomorrow, hopefully it motivates you, but don't go do something silly. Sometimes the best thing you do is be patient, do your homework, treat real estate like a business, understand the financials, and when you get ready to make a deal, know the deal you're making, the offer you're making, and hopefully you'll find yourself as a real estate investor.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Listen. You go ahead.
No. I was going to say, great episode as always, and hopefully everyone stays tuned. We have a lot of great information coming up for our next episodes. Next, we're going to talk about short-term rentals, and we actually, if you stay tuned for 2 more weeks, we have a great interview with one of our money managers that we work with. Yeah, looking forward to that. That's going to be a special interview that we're able to release to everybody. Incredible individual. With that said, hope you guys have an incredible week. Stay tuned next week.